considering hiring an offshore sales team. I think this is something that as business owners, when we are trying to scale out our sales process, we overlook this as a way. We try to think that we have to have this huge, massive budget to hire account executives and BDRs, and that we all of a sudden now need hundreds of thousands of dollars to increase the way in which we pull sales into our company. So today I'm going to show you why you may want to reconsider. More importantly, I'm going to take you through exactly what you need to know, from how do we find them, how do we hire them, how do we pay them, what expectations should we have on them. I'm going to cover everything for you today. So if you are considering hiring an offshore sales team, so the first piece here is you have to look at, do you have systems that can pull in leads and close those leads? Too often we skip this step. You want to have systems that can currently produce a consistent amount of leads that turn into appointments, and we're able to close those at a minimum of a 30% closing rate. So being very clear on who we're targeting, the audience, the ideal customer profile, what the messaging is, and what the offer is. We don't want to not have these things in place. AKA, if you are still in a referral-led sales process, meaning the majority of your deals over the last 6 months have primarily come from a referral-based lead, you're not ready to hire this, because I promise you that if you just try to bring some people in and you have yet to build these systems internally within your company, the process is going to fail. So do ensure that you already have some outbound methods, you have some paid media methods. Now, if you've ever seen any of my videos before, I'm a big proponent for build outbound first before we do paid media. But either way, you want to have what we call SACA, the setting and closing appointments. You want to have those systems in place that can predictably book appointments and close those appointments before we go to hire anybody that I'm about to show you as a part of this process. Now, you should consider hiring offshore sales talent because it's clear that the cost savings are huge. Like I said, if you want to try to find these people within North America or in the UK or Australia, you're going to be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in your annual salary costs. So this is greatly going to take down how much money we need to build ourselves a sales-driven organization. It is a lot more scalable because your talent pool opens up big time. And you're going to be able to reach some people who are very hungry to work. I will say that when we hire from some other cultures, they've outperformed some of the cultures that I've hired from here in Canada and the US. It's a sad thing to say, but you do meet some very, very hungry people who are being given an opportunity that are just not given in their home countries. Now, when to hire the sales, we've already kind of talked about this, that you should have some sort of predictable ways in which to book and close appointments. But ideally, for the last minimum of about 30 days, you've had at least one new appointment coming in each day, maybe even like 1 to 2 each week. But it has to be predictable and it has to be consistent over the last 30 days. That's usually a KPI that I look for before I think about going and making a hire. Now, these roles is really who you should look to hire first. And I'm going to go in order. So the first here is the scraper. This is the person who takes who we give as our ICP, our ideal client profiles. We tell them who they are, where they work, what their titles are, what size of their companies are, how much money they make. Essentially, we hand over like the exact Boolean search that we use on platforms like Sales Navigator on LinkedIn of whom it is that we are trying to reach. And then we give them the SOPs that are required to get that information and then take it into some data enrichment tools where they're going to go and find the correct emails. They're going to go and find personal phone numbers. That's the person that you should be hiring first. The second person that I would layer on to, once that is successful, is a setter, also known as a BDR. There's all different types of titles for this role, but essentially this is the person who is responsible for the booking of appointments. They call our leads, they confirm our appointments, they triage our leads, aka they pre-qualify the lead before they have an appointment with us. That is the role of a setter. And then we have our closers, also known as our sales reps. Actually, this should be, the account executive should go first. I would probably hire your account executive before. Now, some in the SaaS space will call a sales rep also an account executive, and they'll have this intertwined. I prefer for the companies that I build and the partners that we work with, I prefer to have account executives work in the client success management role. They are there to ensure that our churn stays nice and low, and they're there to put our customers through an upsell process and increase the customer lifetime value that we get out of every customer we do. Then the last final piece that we hire is a sales rep. Now, this might come shocking to you because I see a lot of founders, primarily in the tech space, who try to hire this out they hire this sales rep first because either they don't identify as a salesperson or it's a task that they just don't enjoy. So they look to get it off first. But it's the last one that I layer on because you want to have some pieces in place. You want to have enough runway, enough money in the bank to sustain the marketing budget that you're spending on this new rep. So that's usually why I leave the sales rep, also known as the closer, the last hire that I make. Now, I get asked this a lot. How do I handle language barriers? If I'm looking to hire offshore, how does that work? Do the people that I'm talking to, are they going to respond to utilize hearing from a person with an accent? They'll know that they're not from here. And my answer then is you don't. You don't hire somebody primarily who really doesn't have English as a first language. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see when we are looking at hiring offshore sales team is that we go and we make hires for people that is just really going to throw our audience off. And this might come as a surprise to you, but there's lots of people in various offshore places that we can go and hire who actually do and have English as a first language. So this is, I wouldn't even entertain a candidate unless they do, because, in the B2B space, again, you can't throw somebody off. So my favorite place to hire my offshore sales talent is from South Africa. And then second comes South America. Now, of course, South Africa, they have English as a first language. What I love about them is that, especially when we're calling places in North America, like they don't know, am I talking to somebody from England? Am I talking to someone from Australia? Like, where is this person from? But they recognize that they do have English as a first language. So the barrier doesn't get thrown up as quickly when we're making these dials. The second place is South America. So I actually used to run a very large enterprise level cold calling center in Pereira, in Colombia. And we had a lot of reps who worked at that who had English as a first language. So what I found primarily in South America was that there's so many young kids who were born and raised in the United States, and then they end up going back home to their countries because their families are there, their culture is there, they might have a better life there, the cost of living is very high in North America. So they end up going home so that you can find really, really amazing, really, really great talent in South America. Now, as far as where to find these people, well, I'll tell you, we use Facebook ads. Okay, I can run a Facebook ad and hire my agents using an exact image, just like you see as part of my creative. And I can get in South Africa, I typically pay like 3 cents an application. In South America, I will typically pay closer to like $1 to $2 per application. Now, there are various hiring boards out there that you can use. Like there's the LinkedIns of the world and, blah, 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 blah. I'm telling you right now, there's nothing more effective than running a Facebook ad because you will get hundreds, if not thousands of applications. So what I'm not covering on this video today is like what that process looks like, because there are some automations that you want to put in place, but I'll just give you like the super high level. Just ensure that a part of your application process, and this is a person that you're hiring for somebody who has to speak on the phone. So something like a setter is typically you want to listen to what they sound before we do anything, before we review their resumes, before we invite them in for interviews or do any sort of testing and objection handling, any of that stuff. Before you put any effort into this candidate, you first want to hear what they sound like. So a part of your application process should be them submitting a voice recording of a script that you're going to give them so you can hear what they sound like on a phone call. Now, in terms of compensation, at the scraper, we pay $4 per hour, and then we will do some bonus based on how many leads that they scrape per day, as well as like how good the data that they are scraping. The setters, we pay $600 per month. Now, this is all I'm quoting you in USD, okay, in the dollar. $600 per month salary. So we pay that across the board. The expectation is they are working full-time, Monday to Friday, 40-hour work weeks with, lunch off, that kind of thing. But then we want to do an OTE, which stands for on target earnings. We want to get them to the point where they can actually be making $2,000 per month once we factor in their commissions. So you want to reverse engineer what that needs to look like. How much pipeline do I need and how much pipeline do I need to close in order for a setter to be making $2,000 per month? And depending on what your price point of your products or services are is going to depend on you. But ideally, you can reverse engineer a strategy that's going to get a setter by the time that they've been with our company between 3 to 4 months of about $2,000 per month is what they're making. If you can get somebody to there, I promise you they're going to stick with you for a very, very, very long time. And that's a very good wage, especially if you're hiring somebody from like South Africa or like Colombia. Like they're making more money than the average doctor, lawyer, professional services. That's a good amount of money for somebody to make, and they'll be very incentivized. So they're incentivized to, show up to work every day, but they're hungry to make that money because you're going to give them, half a point of commission, again, depending on what your service costs. The purpose here is, again, reverse engineer on target earnings of 2K per month. Account executives, pretty standard, a $30,000 USD salary. And then as well as you can play around with the bonus structures from the amount of churn that they experience, as well as with upsells. Upsells, I do incentivize quite heavily the commission structure. I will give away quite a bit of the commission off that first or second month of the upsell that they gave to really incentivize for the correct behavior. And then as far as sales reps goes, it's a commission only role. I know that this goes against the grain, especially in the tech space where you see people paying $150,000, $200,000 base salary and then plus commissions, or sometimes no commissions at all, and they just get a base salary. And I just really, really good reps, they want to make between $15,000 to $20,000 per month, and therefore they are properly incentivized for the correct behavior, and that is to go and close deals. But they should show up every month and they should be hungry. But really, really good guys are not afraid to do commission only. But there is a very specific reason of why you see in the order of which we hire, and why you should not be hiring somebody as a closer for the first role that you bring in, because you want to show that you have enough pipeline that closer can make that kind of a commission every single month, but that you have a track record. You got to show them that they're actually going to make that, because I'll give you a little bit of intel here through the hiring process. When we go and we hire good reps, they should be asking these questions. They should be asking you, how much pipeline, how much opportunity can I actually make 15 to 20K by selling this company's product or services? Now, you're probably wondering, can I just go ahead and hire this straight from Offshore? We typically don't. What we typically will do is we're doing some promotion from in here. So the setters will often be promoted into roles like account executives and roles into sales reps. But the jump from being a setter to a sales rep can honestly take anywhere from 6 months to a year. Very, very rare have I seen it shortened. Sometimes you'll get people in the door who have just a ton of experience and you can move along. But typically to hire an offshore sales rep, again, we've hired them into usually some sort of a setter's role, and then they've just stayed with the company for about a year, gotten really good at what they do, and then we train them up to be a sales rep. Now, when we look at onboarding your sales team, the first things that you want to do is you want to create your own back-end training. So if you have even something like a Kajabi or a Thinkific or an area which they can log into and at their own time can go through and complete the modules. I don't like it when we have it in Google Docs or in a Google Drive or in ClickUp or Asana. You want to have it in a very specific path, because what we like to do is we have the expectation that before day one that they start, that they should have already completed their training. So we don't need to fully onboard them yet. We just, when we give them the green light and we give them their starting date, we will give them access to their training area so they can come in and they can complete the work. You can also see how much of the work that they've actually created. And when you use programs like that, you can insert little tests and quizzes and test their knowledge as to how well they're actually gaining those processes as they go through. As part of that training, you want to be very clear on who the ICP is. Who is your ideal customer profile? What is the jargon that they use? What's the language that they use? What are the false beliefs? What are the objections? What is other choices for them in the marketplace? How do they view you? How do they book appointments with you? This is the kind of stuff that they need to know, because if they're going to be having these conversations with your future clients, you want to arm them with this information. Yes, we teach them a little bit about our products and what they do, but as any good salesperson knows and understands, is that the sale is 100% won within the discovery process. Therefore, they have to understand what is your ideal customer profile? What are they going through on a daily basis? What are they hearing in their marketplace? What are the challenges that they're going through? That's the kind of stuff that you want to arm them with. Next piece here is leveraging call recording. So from now, if you're not recording all of your interactions from the sales process, you need to start doing that today, and you need to start logging that through. So we have call recordings of when we won the deal, when we lost the deal, when they ask good questions, when they ask bad questions, good experiences, bad experiences. the whole gamut, because we want to have cases that are covered in a live call that they can go back and watch and review. And then, of course, how do they utilize the processes, the SOPs that you're giving them, the trainings that we have on how to use the CRM, how to use the dialers to make all the calls that we're doing, how do they use the automation tools to send out these messages on LinkedIn, to use the cold emails. You want to cover your own in-house training, how you as a company utilize those processes for them in that back-end area. And then, of course, the reporting and tracking. There are certain benchmarks that we want to see them doing on a daily basis. Therefore, there is a tracking implement to every single role that we have in our company. But this is so important when it comes to a sales team. So exactly how do they do that tracking? Where do they log in? How do they do it? What should they be looking for? And then how do you internally communicate as an organization? So you have to give them what that SOP, that system of processes, what that looks like. And then, of course, the sales call best practices, the sales scripts, the objections, the different interactions that they're going to be having on a daily basis. Give them exactly what the structures of those calls should look like. This should all be handled in the back end area. Typically, we will have it by the role. So we have a scraper university. We have a setter university. We have a client success manager university. We have a sales rep university. They have their own specific designed learning tracks that they will go through that we can monitor to see how well or not well that they are actually doing on those systems. Now, to pay our overseas team, I've never seen a platform better than Wise. Wise has been around for, I don't know, I think we've been using it for maybe about 4 years now. It's a great platform. It's easy to send money into it. We have our Stripe accounts just directly linked into our Wise, so we can take the money in there and then we can send it out to anybody on our team, because we just give them a link to go and sign up for a Wise account. They hook up their Wise to their bank account. So if they have their own Wise account, we can instantly send them money. The money hits their account like literally within minutes. And then there's zero fees. There's zero, like, I think we pay like maybe 20 cents to send a transaction, even for a large amount of money. And then the receiver, your contractor that's through this process, they pay barely any fees. So it's the best way in order to how to pay them. Now, in terms of managing them, one of the things you can do, you can see here on the right-hand side, this is what we call our SACA channel. Stands for Setting and Closing Appointments. We have a single channel where all of our sales activities are coming in, from when our new leads come in to deals being signed. Anybody who's on the sales team is inside of this channel so that we can communicate as a team, see what's going in, monitor when the lead's coming in, how quick is your speed to lead. This is the kind of stuff that's all going down inside of the SACA channel. Now, let's talk a little bit about expectations, because you should have some idea on what are the benchmarks that each of these roles should be doing on a daily basis, monthly basis, etc. So the first piece here is the scraper. The scraper should be doing about 150 records per day. Now, that number is going to change if you are collecting various points of data. Now, what I mean by that is if you're also requiring them to grab the Facebook page or their website, but typically if you're just taking a filter search from something like Sales Navigator and using some data enrichment platforms where you're getting phone numbers and emails, a scraper should easily be able to scrape and verify, right? They are verifying phone numbers and email up to the tune of about 150 records per day. So they should be tracking that. They should be completing some trackers so that you can see on a daily basis how much of those records they are getting it every day. As far as your setters go, this is really going to depend on your dialing system that you are using. If you're using a single dialer, and most CRMs should have just a very simple power dialer where they come in and hit play on a list, and it'll dial phone numbers one by one by one by one. A setter working at 8-hour shift, having the usual amount of conversations, should easily be able to hit about 300 dials per day. Now, if you're using a triple dialer like we do with a lot of our outbound and a lot of our partners, and simply what that means is it has the ability to do 3 dials at a single time. They can do 800 dials per day, like super easy. Like we've had new setters come in and they'll smash out like 1,300 dials a day. And that's because the system is making 3 dials out at a time, and it'll make the connection with the first person that picks up. That's different than a predictive dialer. A predictive dialer will make a whole lot more all the time. This is a very simple way of doing it, and it doesn't cost very much. If you have some questions about what dialers to use with your CRM, drop them in the comment section down below on this YouTube video, and I'll DM you, kind of just give me a little bit of, how many people you have, who your target market is, and what CRM you use. And I'll be able to give you some suggestions on the best dialers to use. But either way, 300 to 800 dials per day, again, depending on the dialing system. Now, closers, sales reps, they should be closing at a minimum of a 20% closing rate by the time that they've had 30 live calls. By the time that they've made 30 pitches, they should have closed 20% of those. So good sales reps only get better. Bad sales reps, they really don't get that much better. If you are hiring a sales team for the first time, you should 100% be hiring somebody who has at least 2 years experience in a B2B sales process. Do not hire somebody who is inexperienced, but very, very important that you keep an eye on this KPI, because if they can't get to that closing rate, they're probably never going to. So you should probably just let them go. Now, account executives, we want to see our account executives, also known as client success managers, keep their churn below 10% and get at least a 40% closing rate on upsells when they go through an upsell process with their current clients. Now, some of the tech stacks that you want to consider when hiring an offshore sales team, we love using Instantly for cold email. Of course, we use Slack for all internal communications. Our connector platform is an automation tool that we use for LinkedIn. It's one of the best automation tools that I've ever seen for LinkedIn. It's never gotten a profile ban. It keeps us within the correct limits to not upset the LinkedIn gods. And it allows us to do all the automating and has an API access. So if you want to connect it to a CRM and pass back contact information, it's very, very easy to do that. So highly, highly recommend. And if you need a discount on that, hit me up in the comments below and I'll send you over special vendor pricing that we have with Connector. Next piece here is ManyChat. This really allows us to automate Instagram. They've got some really, really cool AI workflows that once you have lead engaged with you, helps you really work it into appointment. It's very, very cool. We personally really love using a platform called Go High Level. I know there's the HubSpots, there's the Salesforces, there's the Close.ios. Guys, I've used them all. Now, on the flip side, can it get a little glitchy sometimes? Does it try to do a lot of things? Yes. But what I love for Go High Level is it allows us to do a lot of tracking with our prospects. So let me explain. Let's say we sent a cold email to John Smith last night and he clicks on it and actually watches a case study or clicks over to our website. You can actually track that as an action. You can build a math operation that automatically builds a power dialer that has your setter call them ASAP. Important. So that's one of the reasons why I really love GHL is that it is really good at that and it's insanely cost effective. Like to do that feature that I just talked about with other tools is totally possible. It just becomes very, very expensive because they require you to use a lot of outside apps and tools in order to do that. Whereas GHL keeps it all kind of in-house for us. And then we have Make for automations. It also used to be known as Integromat. They changed it to become Make. Also, you could also check out Zapier, but that's how we get the API access to have all of these tech stacks talk to each other so that we can see what's going on. Now, you should have some contracts in place when you hire people in terms of your non-disclosures, exactly like how they're going to be paid, what's happening there. Just keep in mind that you're hiring somebody offshore. Like it's only really as good as a paper that it's written on. I use it as a place to establish what our guidelines and our rules are and to show that this is a serious offer of employment, but here's where I want you to hang out. Super, super important that we have what we call a 90-second offboarding process. The minute that we realize that somebody cannot continue on with our team, you have to be able to swiftly remove access to CRMs. This actually happened to a partner of ours just a little bit like at the end of last year, where they fired an employee of theirs and it's an offshore salesperson on their team. And they went into their CRM and deleted everything. Like I'm talking their entire database, their leads, all of their funnels, their landing pages. They had a whole built out course area for their own clients that they worked with. They deleted all of that. They caused them like weeks and weeks of work. So be very sure that when you are, and this isn't just for, an offshore team, this should be for any team member, is that you should have very swift ways to remove somebody's access to anything that they had the ability to log into very, very quickly before you let that employee know that they're no longer required to be a part of the team. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do you manage different time zones? What are the best practices? Like, what do you tell them? And my answer is, you don't. We require all of our teams to work across North American time zones. So specifically for our setters and our closers, they have some shifts that work between 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. EST. The key here is that you want to set up your dialers to recognize the time zone of the phone number you are calling. So you're not going to call somebody, let's say 9 a.m. in New York, York, but it's 6 a.m. in California, you don't want to bother that person. So make sure that you have some places in there, but I don't allow anyone on my offshore team to work on their time zone. Some may disagree with that, but this is what I found to work incredibly well for us. It does get a little, for especially on the South Africa team, I think by the time it's like 2 o'clock here in EST, it's quite late for them. But I find that some, as long as you're upfront about this through the hiring process, then there's no surprises that come through later. Now, in terms of legal and tax implications, you are hiring somebody who's a contractor. This is not an employee of your business. They are to submit an invoice to us every single time that they are to receive any form of a paycheck or commissions, comes through as an invoice, and they are put through as a contractor. There are some countries, be aware that regardless, because they are being hired as a contractor and you are a business from another place, that some of them I think Mexico does this, that they can actually come after you, that you are meant to be paying insurance and you're meant to be paying extra taxes. So you do want to check what are the requirements of the country that you're hiring from, if that is something that is of worry to you. Now, in terms of handling performance issues, within 7 days of onboarding, a scraper should be now doing 150 contacts per day. A setter, by the time they've been with us for 90 days, they should be booking at least 2 appointments per day. And a closer, as I've mentioned before, they should be doing at least a 20% closing rate. Very, very important, this performance monitoring here. You should be listening to their calls like daily, both your setters and your closers and your account executives. Somebody needs to be monitoring those calls. Now, there are lots of AI tools out there that we can utilize to go through. There's platforms like Gong, even Firefly, I've noticed, has some really cool AI features that allow them to analyze the calls with the right prompts, can do that. But you should still, because the AI still can't, still does not, even the newest improvements, it still cannot pick up sentiment. It can still not pick up where your setter messed up on the active listening and should have picked up on this one thing, what that was an objection. You got to be listening to their calls on a daily basis. Now, the ethical considerations in hiring offshore teams, many people say, wow, only $4 an hour. How can anybody survive on that? For a scraper, I would say that that's probably one of the lower positions that we pay for in that position, but you do want to give them some avenues to move up into the company. We give avenues into bonuses and KPIs that if you hit X, Y, and Z, this will be your bonus at the end of the quarter. Make sure that you pay them on time and make sure that you make good on the promises that you make. If you tell them that you're going to give them that bonus, or if you tell them they can have Fridays off or that they can have the Canadian holiday off, that you actually fulfill on that. But do remember that you are giving them opportunities that are just not available to them, right? Like it's very hard for somebody in South Africa with no formal professional training to go and get a job that makes them $2,000 a month. So super, super important. Now, can offshore sales teams handle high-level conversations? We get this a lot. Quick answer, yes, 100%. And if you did the onboarding process well, and you taught them about what your customer wants, what they're looking for, how they talk, the jargon, the lingo, their false beliefs, common objections, this stuff becomes really easy, becomes null and void. You have to ensure though, when you're pulling somebody in, as mentioned, is that before we even start the hiring process, is that you already hear how they sound on the phone. Are they professional? Can they respond well? And even do they even have things like good Wi-Fi? Those are the kinds of things that we want to be testing for. But yes, remove that thought out of our head. 100% they can be having these high-level conversations when the training is right. Now, some differences that you should be aware of. Again, time. If you're hiring, the great thing that I love about hiring from South America is that we have the same time zone. So that becomes null and void. Currencies, right? If you are a Canadian business and you're advertising these roles, don't get confused about the USD to the Canadian. If you tell them I'm going to pay you $600 per month, that's what I recommended that you pay in USD. $600 Canadian is totally different. So you have to make sure that everybody's aware of the currency that you are paying in. And I mark that currency. So what I don't like to do is if I pay $600 and I do the conversion for them and then send that over, I always just send the USD straight over. The next big piece here is Wi-Fi. As part of our application process, you do have to submit a screenshot of how fast your Wi-Fi is, because any of these roles that I just went over, it's all being done online. So if they have really, really slow Wi-Fi, they're just not going to be very productive with their role. Power outages, this is a really, really big problem when you're hiring from South Africa. They have a lot of power outages, unfortunately. So you have to be aware if they have rolling power outages, what days and times that those are going to be, and then do they have backups? We would ensure that our team had certain access to other ways that they could access the internet. And then, of course, the political climates and climates a whole. This has nothing to do with the sales team, but I remember once in one of my companies, we had a large arm that was a creative arm of our business. And that was a lot of fulfillment that we did for the clients that we worked with. And they were all in the Philippines. And then the Philippines got hit. That's one area got hit with a really, really bad hurricane. So just be really mindful as to the country that you are hiring from, what's happening there, what are they going through, and just be aware to deal with the consequences of that. Now, to sum this all up, $2,500 per month in total operating costs is all you require to run this team. That's with labor costs, that's with tech stacks, and that is a team that can book an introductory 2 to 3 appointments per day. So now this daunting task of building out a sales team, which traditionally years prior has cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to get up off the ground and needed some sort of VC funding in order for us to do, completely gets taken away. And that's why I gave you today a very systematic approach so that you can just start to layer on successful ways that we can increase our output and increase our sales. All right, if you enjoyed this video and you have any questions, be sure to take them down below. Now, let's go close some deals.